I was born in a farmhouse in Cuba. I saw running water, electricity, and a toilet in the US in 1971. I tried college for a semester. I had to go work. I had to make money. Whatever I made, I had to earn on my own. And I had been working since I'm 12 years old. I was broke. I couldn't afford to stay in school. I said, I gotta figure this out. So I got up and I started working again.
Do you think you have to be born a high achiever to achieve things, or can you kind of be taught how to be a high achiever? Can you be taught the habits of working hard?
I think you're either born with a desire inside of you, and then at some point that desire gets satisfied. I think social media corrupts the message, the true message of what hard work is and dedication.
It's very easy to be complacent now. Hey, enjoy your life, do that. You only live once, cool. I don't think a lot of young people understand that. Most of the people that become successful, they made money, they understand the value of money. What's your message to those kids out there think that it's gonna come overnight?
All I can tell you is that, honestly,
guys, welcome back to the Leaders Talk Podcast, right? The place where I'm your host, Jacob Pino. I'm going to interview leaders amongst every industry, literally, right? Athletes, CEOs, executives, entrepreneurs, politicians, influencers, guys, amongst the industry. And for what, right? So that you could take a piece of everybody's success and ultimately apply it to your own and become a better leader in the process. But guys, today we went in on it for an hour and a half. Guys, you guys are in for like a treat. Like I can't even describe it. Like you guys are in for it. CEO and founder of VIVO Real Estate Group. Guys, let me just break down the numbers really quick. I want to leave you guys to figure out the rest. But this guy that I just interviewed, he has been in the real estate industry, specifically commercial real estate industry, for over 25 years, 40 years. 40 years. I thought it was 1990.
85.
Oh, I thought it was 90. See, guys, this is where I even mess up. Over 40 years of experience, guys, and the knowledge that he just dropped on you guys is incredible. We went in on it. Not only business, not only the road to your first million, not only how to become a better salesperson, not only to achieve the things that you see behind, but to do it in an honorable way, right? To have a balance with still having a family, still having a wife, still having kids that you love, that they love you. Guys, that's how deep that we went. And not only that, placing your faith above all else. Guys, this interview, we touched it all. I encouraged you to make it to the end. And I'll see you guys in like literally a second. But guys, seriously, sit back, enjoy it. Eat a meal, have popcorn, do whatever you need to do, but enjoy this interview. And I love you guys so much. The most important thing is to understand a person's backstory, because I said it in another podcast. I don't think leaders are born. I think they're made over a long period of time. And you have a very interesting story. But
thank you.
Guys, it's my pleasure and honor to interview CEO and founder, Rene Vivo. Appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here.
So if you don't mind, I want you to take the viewers back a little bit, because like I said, you came from the corporate side of things. You started this. A lot of people will look at you and say, hold up, you had a job with Codina, right? You had a job that you were with 8 years.
Yep.
CBRE, right?
Correct.
People will look outside in and say, hold up, you're doing a pretty good job. I mean, you're working with one of the top guys. You had a job at CBRE. Like, why go this route? So talk to me. Why did you make the decision to go from having a job to then starting your own business?
That's a great question. Obviously, as an entrepreneur, I really chose to be in commercial real estate because I felt it was one of the only career paths that you could really, you can do as much as you want. You can be, you can be as successful as you want. All you got to do is put the hard work in. And then normally, you'll see the payoff on the back end after you put the work in, but you have to put the work in. And obviously, if we go even further back, I actually started in the business in 1985 in New Jersey. So I'm originally moved to New Jersey back in 1971 after moving from Havana, Cuba to the U.S. And unlike the majority of the Cuban stories, mine wasn't one in Miami. It was one that was based out of New Jersey. So in 1985, I got into the business and I started working with a company called Archie Schwartz Company. For you young guys out there, I recommend that you watch a movie that's Glengarry Glen Ross.
Glenn Ross. I heard it. Patrick Bet-David. I don't know if you know who Patrick Bet-David. He had that as like his top 5 movie recommendations.
Yeah, I would say it's one of my top movie. But if you want to watch a good movie, watch Glengarry Glen Ross. So Glengarry Glen Ross, Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah,
that was that's where I cut my teeth in. The company's called the Archie Schwartz Company, probably one of the top industrial real estate firms in New Jersey. I was there from 1985 till 1991. I chose to make a move to Miami because I'm a very family-oriented person. And at the time, I was married, 2 children, and my parents moved to Miami in 1988. So I'm up in New Jersey, and I'm coming down to Miami, twice a year, usually in the summers. Kids are up, and then during the holidays for Christmas. So during one of those holidays, I decided to visit just to see what the lay of the land was for commercial real estate in Miami. And I went to interview with at the time, before CBRE, they were called CB Commercial, which is actually Coldwell Banker Commercial. It was a transition. It became CB Commercial, then became CB Richard Ellis, and now it's where you have CBRE. So that's a little background on that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, there you go. So now you have the background on it. It's interesting. A lot of guys who are still obviously in the business that are still doing extremely well that are at CBRE, old friends. But anyways, so in 1991, I took an interview. Actually, I'm sorry, 1990, I took an interview, went back and kind of made the decision a year later that I wanted to move down here. And I took a position in the CB Coldwell Banker Commercial's office in Brickell. So that's where my career started. I would say my career started in Florida, was in Miami, was with CBRE. I was at CBRE. I had a very good career there. And in 1991, I was introduced to, at the time it was Cadena Bush Klein, which is the Cadena Group. And I made a decision to kind of switch over to Cadena. I was always very interested in the development side of the business. This offered me an opportunity to understand not only like the marketing of industrial properties, but also, what does it take to go from ground to building to delivering? And for me, it was a great experience there. I did that I was at Cadena from 99 to 2002. In 2002, then I decided to fly my own flag, and I opened up Vivo Real Estate Group. So that's
the back steps.
That's a chronological order of.
I think that's super important for people to understand, especially for younger viewers, because obviously our audience, the majority is young. But I even want to take a step further, because going back to like what I said, I don't think leaders are born, they're made. I also think a lot of people, their success that they've had in their life is a lot dictated to their upbringing, to their family, to what their family values said, to, hey, you can do whatever you want. There's no limits to anything. Or look, our family, this is kind of the way that we do it. We just get jobs, we play it safe, and don't try to do more. How was your upbringing like? Did your parents have money? Were they telling you, hey, by the way, like, you start your own business as soon as you can? Like, what was that family upbringing like?
That's interesting. That is probably the norm. For me, it wasn't. For me, it's totally the opposite. So I was born basically in a farmhouse in Cuba. So my parents were, they were sugarcane farmers. And I mean, I honestly, I saw running water, electricity, and a toilet in the U.S. in 1971. Before that, I was born in, talk about the backcountry. I'm from Havana, Cuba, but Havana is a pretty large province, and there is an area that they call, Havana Campo, and I was in Havana Campo, which is pretty deep pretty deep up in, I would say, in the middle of nowhere, and and I grew up, very simple life, very like a farmer's life. Went to school. Our school was, one of our neighbors who taught all the kids. She was a teacher for all of them. And then, then again in 1971, we had the opportunity to leave Cuba and, and migrate to the US. So that was the first time I was ever on a plane, Eastern Airlines. First time I had a Coke. First time I had a pack of juicy fruits. These are fond memories of things that you just never leave your, never leave your memories. It's a great time. And then I remember coming here and seeing all the cars and seeing, stuff that I had never seen before. I mean, you grew up pretty isolated.
Yeah.
So for me, it was quite an experience. My parents, my dad was a janitor and my mom was a seamstress. So she worked in a factory sewing, and my dad was a janitor at a hospital.
Wow.
And that's what they did from, for many years, from 1971 to like 1988, that they decided to move to Miami. And at that time, they retired in Miami. So during my upbringing, I graduated high school. I tried college for a semester. Unfortunately, I didn't pursue career to I would say expand my educational background. I had to go work. I had to make money. I couldn't go to my dad or my mom for $1 or $2. I mean, whatever I made, I had to earn on my own, and I had been working since I'm 12 years old. And so my first job was loading soda trucks when I was 12. And then from there, I just, you learn hard work, and I know what hard work is like, and I know what it takes to, I know that I know what the value of things are. I know what money can buy you, and how hard it is to acquire that. So whenever I acquired something, I was very careful that it was important, and that it wasn't, it was just wasting money. Credit cards didn't exist back then. Everything was done with cash.
It's very powerful that you say to value it, because I had this, I don't remember, I think it was my grandmother that told me. She's very Cuban background. Her mother, my great grandmother, came to the United States from Cuba to have her here, but super, super Cuban. But she used to always tell me, like, growing up when I was like 15, 14, when I was in high school, see, you don't understand the value of money. You don't understand that what you have right now, paying for your trainings to go to football, to do this, you think it's free, but you don't understand the value. I'm gonna, whatever. You don't know what you're saying. Whatever. But as you grow older, right, I think you start to understand that it's not money in itself that you're valuing. You're not valuing money. You're valuing your time. I think that, more importantly, is what it's about, and I want to get into it later, because I think that's the juiciness, and I think that's what you guys are here for. But I want to continue with this family thing, because I think it's extremely important. Going back to your family, right? Your upbringing. Where in there, like you said, you went from offloading, was it sodas?
Yeah, loading soda trucks.
Loading
school.
soda trucks. That was before or after high school?
No, I was 12 years old.
12 years old.
That was in middle school. Yeah.
And how long did you have that job for?
About 3 years. I was there until I was like 15 years old.
And then as soon as you graduated high school?
I went to college. I tried Bergen Community College in New Jersey for a semester. And after the first semester, I was broke. I mean, I couldn't afford to stay in school, and I couldn't afford to go anywhere. I couldn't afford to buy a car. I couldn't, I said, I gotta figure this out. So I got up and I started working again.
So let me ask you, I think a lot of people looking at your situation would say, hold up, how do you go from offloading sodas, unloading sodas, and then now to being where you're at right now? And I think an even deeper question could be, where did you find the belief in yourself that you could obtain what you have right now? If you never had it before, if you never saw it. Like, it's easy for somebody that's grown up with it to see, oh yeah, my father had it. Yeah, it's more than possible. But when you don't have it, when your parents didn't have it, when nobody in your family had it, how do you find the belief in yourself that you could get this life?
I think that, you have to faith. I guess you have to faith that and believe in yourself, most of all. And I hate to say it, but you're either born with an attitude of wanting to be a high achiever versus an attitude of complacency. And high achievers, me personally, I've never measured myself by how much money I have or how much I made. I kind of I measured myself by, you know, what have I achieved so far? You know, what else can I achieve in life that will not disrupt my family life? So the balance between being able to, you know, like when my kids were growing up, you know, my daughter was in power cheer and my son was playing basketball and the other one was, you know, also playing basketball, and then trying to juggle that, you know, that family time while trying to grow my business was very tough. But I never took away from my children the time that they deserved as a parent. You know,
Yeah.
I went to the basketball games. I went to the practices. I mean, we did it all. You know, we traveled with my daughter when cheering. You know, my daughter was a high level achiever as well. My daughter ended up with, you know, she played at American Heritage Basketball, and
Yeah.
she ended up with a, you know, Division I contract, went to play at Indiana State. Ultimately finished up playing 3 years in University of Tampa. So she played D1 ball, full ride, D2 full ride, very high achiever, you know. And so in our family, you know, and there's people who are high achievers. You know, I have a son right now, 18 years old, and he's in Herbert Business School. And, you know, I think he's one of like 2 kids that got in, and that's a great story. And I tell you how he just never, he never thought he'd get accepted. So he kept getting emails from and he just kind of like forego it. And he thought it was just like a follow-up. All of a sudden he decides to open up an email and says, "Hey, you've been accepted. Why aren't you responding?" And he walks in like 11:30 at night. I'm watching the news, and he goes, his eyes are like wide open. He goes, "I've been accepted to UM." I go, "What?" He goes, "I've been accepted to UM." I go, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah." He says, and then he tells me a story. I go, because he never thought, he's, you know, one of those things where he didn't think that he was going to get accepted. So that was interesting.
And that's a hard school to, I'll say I applied to, I didn't get in, but that school right now, I think more than any school in Florida is the hardest school to get into.
Yeah.
Especially the business school. It's
very tough.
Yeah.
And then I have a daughter that's in medical school. You know, so, you know, Chris is on UM, you know, Crystal's in medical school. And then I have my natural children, which are Elisa, Christian and Adrian. They're both also, everybody's kind of busy, have their own life. They're a little bit older than, you know, at 32, 34, and 36.
Let me ask you though, that mindset that you said, because clearly it ran through the family, right? But I think there's a lot of people out there that also, they want more of life. They want to feel purposeful. They want to build a business. They want to do all this stuff, but their habits don't correlate with it. Their work ethic doesn't correlate with it. Do you think you have to be born a high achiever to achieve things, or can you kind of be taught how to be a high achiever? Can you be taught the habits of working hard?
I wish I knew the answer to that, honestly. I guess the right answer, you know, would be, oops.
No, you're good. You're good.
I said the right answer would be that anyone can be taught to be a high achiever. I don't know if that's true. I honestly don't. I don't know if that's true. I think you're either born with a desire inside of you, and then at some point that desire gets satisfied. So measuring you know, your achievements. I think it's a personal, you know, and I'm speaking from my side. It's for me. It's I felt like I've never achieved everything that I ever wanted to achieve, because I think there's so much more still ahead. And time is what's important, you know, to make sure that you use your time wisely while you're also trying to hit those, you know, those goals in your life.
There's a quote that I pulled that, and I want to get into. I know you guys are like itching. What they love is like the content that's like money, entrepreneurship, career. We're gonna get to that, guys. We're getting to that. But there's a quote that I pulled that, and I'm kind of experiencing it right now with the business, with the podcast, that the money that you make, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, isn't correlated to you being the smartest, you being the hardest worker. I think it's correlated to how much stress you can take on, how much stuff you can delegate, how many people you know, how many relationships you have. I think that's the correlation between your financial outcome? I don't know your input on that.
I'm terrible at this because I'll give you, I'll share some things with you, some personal things. One, I've never read a book cover to cover. Two, I'm very hard at watching movies. I kind of get distracted. So it's got to be really
Only Glenn Ross. That's all. That's the only movie.
Glenn Ross.
Wait,
Glenn Ross. That's the name. Glenn Ross.
Glenn Ross.
Yeah.
Say
Glenn
that fast.
Gary. Yeah. And I think I have a high level of ADD, but that's probably one of the reasons. I've been like kind of self-taught. I've never listened to like motivational videos. I've never bought into, I guess, someone else's, secret to success. I just figured out how to do it my way, and it's worked for me. And then I've been able to then coach plenty of people. There's a lot of, I would say, successful real estate, commercial real estate brokers in this town that have either come through my office or been a part of my life at some time that I've been able to help and train and teach them and advise them. So for me, coaching is very important. I'm very hard to be coached.
That's interesting. That's interesting that you say it, because you hear a lot of like people that say like, "Oh, I had this mentor in my life that changed my life. I had this person. I read this book. It changed my life." But to say that is like different,
I like I said, I can't. Like I wish that I can sit here and tell you, I read this great book, or here, guys, I have 3 books you guys should read. And I mean, there's guys in my office that do extremely well, that are very high. As they're high level achievers. And they're all about that. And I look at them and I'm to me, it's impressive,
Yeah.
I think maybe I should have tried that, but for me, it didn't work. For me, it was trial and error. I think that my business has been built on, integrity, loyalty, relationships.
My daddy used to always tell me something growing up, that he said a wise man learns from another's mistakes. Now, I'm sure there's plenty of mistakes that we can get into of you building the business. But now that you talk about you're not coachable, but you do coach a lot of other brokers, a lot of people in their career, looking at your mistakes, what is it that you're telling that person that says, "Hey, look, I want to get to your position where I'm successful, I'm making the money, have the family balance. Like, I don't want this overtaking my life, but I want to be successful like you." What is it that you're coaching that person?
Do exactly what I tell you to do. And if you follow my formula worked for me. And that's that's what helped me succeed. I said, most of the times when new brokers, I should call them brokers, but it's agents, they're really not technically brokers.
Yeah.
But in our field, we tend to call anyone who works in the field brokers.
Yeah.
Because we're broker real estate.
Of course.
So I tend to tell the young guys, I kind of give them a list of things that they need to do and stuff that they need to achieve, assignments. And I tell them exactly how to do the assignment. And then I can come back, a couple of weeks later and say, how's it going? And they're like, "Oh, I got stuck on this." I said, "Well, explain to me exactly, what you did." "Well, how you told me to, go down these streets and talk to so-and-so. I found this other pocket that I thought was more interesting. And then I thought I'd start maybe sending them emails, or I start doing it, and they start to come up with their own ideas because they think now that they have a kind of like I would say a
better way of doing it.
They have a better way, to skin the cat,
Yeah.
And when I tell all these, the young guys, it's like, look, I'm telling you, and I'm teaching you how to take that straight path and the shortest path to that objective. So you can't take a left turn and think that there's a shortcut. You got to go straight to the objective, and the way that I'm telling you to follow the guidelines that I'm giving you. And usually what slows people down is not following the guidelines. One of those guidelines is, wake up early. Get in the office, be out of here by 10 o'clock. Don't come back till after 4. Do all of your administrative work before or after. Don't do it during business hours. Don't think you're going to show up to somebody's office at 8 o'clock in the morning and they're going to want to talk to you. No, they're going to want to settle in, have their coffee, get their meetings going, get their stuff going. 10, 11 o'clock, perfect time to make a call. After 3:30, they're getting ready to shut the place down. They're worried about, how they did for the rest of the day, how the day went. They're closing out their books, they're shutting down, whatever it is. So they're not going to pay attention to you. They're not going to listen to you. So, those are the simple things, so you follow those guidelines, and that's just like one of 10 or 20 different, I would say, ways that we teach the brokers how to get going.
It's almost the intangibles. It's not that they lack skills. It's not that they lack the information. They just lack the disciplines.
Discipline. That's the word. Great word.
So do you think that's the biggest mistake that young people trying to make their career are making? They don't have enough discipline to follow the guideline, enough discipline to go down the road that mentor or somebody like you is telling them?
Yeah. I think it's discipline, and it also has to do with, you going back to social media. I think social media is, corrupts the message, the true message of what hard work is and dedication. A lot of the stuff I believe that you see on social media, they show you in a 5 or 10-second clip.
Yeah.
They show you, what they've accomplished, but sometimes they don't tell you that maybe that took them 3 months to get to those 10 seconds that they're there. I think that kids today are they're living at home, past the age of 25. I know of kids that are 25, even 30 years old, that their parents are paying for their cell phones, paying for their cars. Basically they have a free ride. So when they show up to work, if they don't kill,
there's no urgency.
Mommy has a steak on the table, and cell phone's getting paid. And if you're short, they'll give you money for gas. I came from a background that I couldn't ask for $1. So I needed to work. I needed to kill in order to eat. I couldn't ask anyone for a handout. And today, the young generation is really, in my opinion, doesn't really understand what sacrificing yourself means. And sacrificing yourself means that if you can't afford it, you can't have it. Mommy shouldn't be paying for it.
I really like that you say that. It's very powerful. And I want to ask you, do you think that's almost like a hack to become successful faster, creating that sense of urgency in your life, whether that's moving out, paying for your own stuff, because it's very easy to be complacent when you have everything you need.
When you're worried about your next meal and you have nowhere to turn, that's a rude awakening. When you can't afford to pay for gasoline for your car, when you can't, make rent, you need to realize you need to roll up your sleeve and maybe, grab a pick and a shovel and show up in somebody's yard and say, hey, I'll clean your yard for $50 and, or whatever you'll pay me, and be satisfied that somebody's going to give you a job, because obviously what you're doing, you're not doing it well, but so you need to supplement, what you're doing. I'll give you a perfect example. When I started in the business, I had times when I would, when we were down and out, it was hard. I would tell you that I've had I would say the success started in, somewhere around, 2005, 2006, just when the market was starting to really.
It's a couple of years, 3-4 years of you.
Well, when I say that, but remember, but I started in 1985. So from 1985 till 2005, it was hard work. It was dedication. It was, hitting the streets every day, making the calls every day, building the relationships, building, that. So all of that building is what led up to me opening my company. So that all of that hard work and is what got me to that point. And then from that point on, then things started to kind of click. But that's because it took me all those years to get that experience to be able to open the company and say, I can do this on my own. It's time to fly my own flag. And what I was getting at before then, I had times where, where I would cut my neighbor's yard and, get 20 to $50 for doing it. And I was happy to do that. And, hook up a fan for someone in their house because they didn't know how to do it. And, and then they throw you $100 for doing it. And
Wow.
why? Because that helped. That helped. I had a wife, I was married. I had 2 children, probably 3 by then. By the time we moved to Florida, we had 3 kids already. And that's back in 1991. So things were still, kind of getting going. It wasn't all that, the ride has been kind of like a roller coaster ride, and it's just started to smooth out. And maybe, the last, 15 or 20 years.
There's a lot to unpack there. I think that's really powerful. You know what I admire most? How you go back to where you started, that you're not afraid to say that you offloaded sodas, that you were cutting your neighbor's grass just to get $25, putting a ceiling just.
How many kids do you know your age today that, need $50 and turn around and say, you know what, I'm going to go ask my neighbor if I can wash his car and maybe he'll give me $50 for doing that, because that's what he's paying the guy who, washes his car.
I think the sense of independence. You know what? I think there's 2 sides to it. There's a side that it's very easy to be complacent now. It's very easy to be complacent. Just take your life on chill mode, save it for later. And I think this isn't a new thing. It's always been like this. Take your life on chill mode. Look, go out with your friends. Go enjoy your life while you're young up until you're like 20s. 20s, just go clubbing, go partying, go smoke, go drink, do whatever you want. Hey, enjoy your life. Do that. You only live once. Cool. And then the other side to it is, which I was going to ask you, another rise, something that we're seeing is that a lot of people my age are getting a distaste of corporate America, job, or anything that's not, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm making millions of dollars my first year. Like, they're getting a very distaste of it. And this is what I want your take on it, because I don't think a lot of young people understand that most of the people that become CEOs, most of the people that start their business, most of the people that become successful by their metrics, by the cars, the money, the watches, whatever it may be, have years, like you said, of they had jobs, they made money, they understand the value of money. And it's not just, hey, 1 year I'm going to launch a business and then I'm going to be successful and I'm going to get social media followers. This is what I'm going to do. And I think that's the reality of the other reality of my generation. So what's your message to those kids out there? Because I see a lot on social media that think that it's going to come overnight. I think it's going to come after 1 year, 2 years, a couple months of just putting in work.
Great question. There are certainly, I'm not going to
Generalize
or overlook the fact that it's also a new world. I'm 60 years old. In my world, it was hard work, dedication, and everything kind of took years to be, to basically to happen.
Yeah.
In today's world, there's, influencers, there's all kinds of, the internet has created certainly a different type of business model
100%.
that really doesn't kind of correlate with my business model. So it's hard for me to tell you that I could tell that that's the wrong approach. All I can tell you is that, honestly, if you have a dream, you need to follow it. And if your dream is to be an influencer, if your dream is to be a podcaster, whatever it is, I'm sure, your dad wanted you to do other things other than being a podcaster. I'm sure your dad wanted you to go to college and do other, and become a doctor or a lawyer, whatever, which is what all parents want.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you are a entrepreneur, at a very young age, which is admirable. And I mean that sincerely. But for my advice is don't drink the Kool-Aid. If you're drinking somebody else's Kool-Aid, then you're wasting time. Um, and you're probably, it's going to take you a lot longer to get there,
What do you mean by drinking somebody's Kool-Aid?
uh,
What do you mean by drinking somebody's
thinking that
Kool-Aid?
you could do that that guy who's doing what you want to do, that you can do it as good as he can or better, and not following your dream, but trying to become him because that's what you see in social media. That's who you follow, and you want to be just like him. I think that when you start following people that you want to be just like them, you start to try to mimic them, and you're really not creating. You're not creating I would say a brand that's yours.
Yeah.
If you're going to be, if you're looking for that, for that way out, I guess, maybe to get things going, then try to be your own person. And a lot of times, people are looking at someone else and not really following their own desires.
And I think the biggest thing to it is that sometimes it's hard. And I speak from my personal experience. It's hard to follow your own inner voice, which I like to believe is the Holy Spirit talking to you very subtly. There's a seed that's planted that you're like, you know what? I keep thinking about it. It keeps pondering on my mind. There has to be some reason that it's here. I don't think I'm thinking about this so long, so like indicatively that it's just by accident. Like whatever that vision is. And I think this applies to a lot of you guys out there that we can get fearful of taking action of a decision, like you said, because whether our parents want this from us. Hey, by the way, your dad's already doing this, so just go down that route. Perfect. You have that. But at the same time, I think at an early age is the best time, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but to go after that itch that you have, that, hey, you know what? I've been thinking about starting this business. I've been thinking about an agency. I think it's the most crucial years that you should go after that vision. But like you said, obviously there's a different generation. Like I could do this podcast a year from now. I get some big guy, oh boom, it blew up, and the podcast is taking care of itself with the money, whatever it may be. And I didn't have to I busted my ass for it, but it's a different time frame, obviously. But I also do think the same principles apply of you have to work hard. You have to put in ridiculously amount of hours. And the thing about it is that you put in hours. Let's say today you put in the 12 hours of whatever it may be. You try to reach out to this person, you email this person, you call this person, nothing happens, and take the same energy and take your happy ass tomorrow and do the same thing over again. And then the next thing, the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and then stacking that up. So let me ask you, what are some of the qualities, obviously discipline that we talked about, but what are some of the qualities that you instilled in yourself when you started the business that ultimately took you to where you're at today?
I think that being genuine is very important. Building relationships with your clients. I would say, your clients don't want to buy or lease, like we do real estate, with someone that they don't know. So it's very important to build a personal relationship with your clients always. I mean, get to know them and do it in it. I mean, if that's not a genuine, approach for you, then there's other approaches. Mine has always been that I normally, I mean, I can tell you that the majority, more than 50% of my business, it's return business from clients that are friends that come over, and they'll have a cigar. They want to hang out. They want to talk cars, and we normally will have a business meeting that lasts an hour or two. And at the end of that meeting, if I were to go back and say, okay, how much time did we spend talking about business? Maybe 10 or 15% of that whole conversation was business. The rest of the time, it was really just talking about, their family, whether it's family, whether it's, our God, there's so many things that bond people together. And at the end of the day, you want to do business with your friends, you want to do business with people you trust. So building trust, being genuine about it, I think it's probably the best quality that I would say that I've always instilled in myself.
And that goes for anything, because I know, like you said, our generations are definitely different, but I think that applies to anything, any business that you want to go down, any industry you want to become an influencer. I think it all goes back to that, because at the end of the day, whether social media is here or not, people gravitate towards people that they trust, that they feel like, you know what, I can't trust you with business. You know what? I do believe that you can bring the outcome that you say you can bring. And seriously, I thank you a lot for your time, because I think there's somebody, have a feeling that there's something that you said that just resonated super hard with somebody out there. And I appreciate you opening up and sharing your story of like coming from Cuba, like offloading the cans, because that's a really like personal story. And I really appreciate you sharing that.
Absolutely.
And I want to end it off on a strong note, talking about God, if you're open to it.
Absolutely.
I think another thing is, I read the Bible a lot, and I think it's very important to keep that foundation, to always think that there's something bigger than you, because
100%.
then you live in your own world. Then you're your God of your own life. And there's a saying that some people say they don't believe in God, but that's because they idolize something, and that thing is their God. The car is their God. The money is their God. Their dreams are their God. And I believe having God in your life, having the Holy Spirit work through you, having a relationship with Jesus, that humbles you. It makes you realize that it's much bigger than all this. It's much bigger than what I see. It's much bigger than that. So let me ask you, as far as building a business, a very successful business, having a family, your relationship with God, how do you water that relationship? How do you grow a relationship at the same time having a business, having a family? Like, that's something I'm struggling with too. So that's fine.
I think we all do. I think we all struggled. I was saved in probably 1995, 1996. And the person that led me to God was my own son, without him even realizing it. And honestly, we could do a whole podcast on that. That would be a very interesting podcast for you to.
No, I would love to.
If you wanted to.
I would love to. Just me.
But I will tell you that that in that point in my life, I think my life changed completely. That's really what turned my attention to what was important in my life, and what was important in my life was to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ as my savior, to be able to understand that there was something much bigger, much more powerful than anything else in this world, and it was, it's God. To be able to unload, my 800-pound gorilla that I carried every day in business. When I got home, I would take that, that gorilla, and I would put it on my night table, and I would tell God, hang on to this. I'll pick it up tomorrow morning. But right now, I want to have quality time with my children. I want to have quality time, in my house, and have peace. And I think that for me, that's what kind of gives me that, that calm in my life from all the stress and everything else that goes on during the day. I normally start my day praying, and I end my day with a prayer. I walk in many times. I tell you, I left last night at 8:30, and I was in my office, and I turned around and said, God, thank you for everything that you're providing in this place for me. And I went home. And to me, that was my, just acknowledging the fact that everything through him is possible.
I love that. I love that. Seek first the kingdom of God, and then the rest will be added. And I think I'm experiencing it, because it's very hard, especially in those early years of building something, especially those early years of like, you have so much sense of urgency of like, no, but this needs to get done. This needs to get done. And then I feel like a lot of time God is like, sit down. Because you could sit down the whole day, not do anything, and I'll do my magic, and something will happen that you were working for a year, and it'll come to you just because I lifted my finger. And I feel that sense of faith, that sense of trusting in God's plan, like it says that he has plans to prosper us and not to fail us. brings us that peace, like you said. So I really do think there's a lot of peace in understanding that it's not, the world doesn't revolve around you, that the Lord is the most important thing that you should focus on. And it's hard to like balance it and have this and have family, business, and everything. But I generally think what you said was very important, especially for a lot of people my age, to realize that you have it. You have the cars, you have the watch, you have the business, you have everything. Like you really do, you know? And a lot of people look at you and say, oh, I want that, I want that, I want that. But I think what comes with it is very, and you can speak it, just it by itself, like making that your God. Oh, no, I love that car.
100%.
Is very unsatisfying.
Yeah. This is fun.
It is fun. And it looks very fun. Yeah.
This is fun, but this is not what it's all about.
Yeah.
This is more of an entertainment, like I'd say, a lot of guys like to fish, which I do, but I'm not, I don't have a boat any longer, play golf, whatever it may be, attend all of the, major sport events. For me, it's, I like my cars. I like to take some stress off. I haven't done it in a while, but I used to track my cars before. So tracking a car it's like the most fun you could ever have. And you talk about stress relief. I mean, when you're done with that, your adrenaline releases all the stress in the world out of you.
Yeah.
But getting back to Christ, and God, for me, the most satisfying and I would say, for my personally, the gentleman who was just here before, Jonathan, has been, long story, and I won't talk about it, but Jonathan said to me, he said, the most important thing he said that I wanted to tell you today is that you led me to Christ, more than 10 years ago. And he said, I want to thank you for that. And so for me, to be able to lead someone else to understanding what freedom you get from understanding that there's something higher than you and something that's willing to take your problems away from you and make you understand that what you think is critical, it really isn't. Just put it in his hands and go about your business and continue your walk. And I'm telling you, it's the most gratifying thing you'll ever find is when you find that peace inside of you.
He said he's the Prince of Peace, the creator of peace. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I also think another bigger purpose of this podcast is that I think a lot of people that make it to a very high level in business are afraid to mention God, Jesus Christ. They don't, hey, don't talk to me about, hey, no, because business, and keep that away. I don't, sorry, you're going to say something. I see you like.
No, I guess it's this whole woke thing, that kind of just, for guys like me, it's
people don't have courage to say that Jesus really is Lord and Savior. People don't have the courage to believe in what they believe in. People don't have the courage to speak out. And I think that's a bigger purpose in the podcast, that I don't want to be afraid to make it to that position with the podcast, with the marketing agency, with anything, and not mention Jesus through everything and say, you know what? Everything was done through him. So I appreciate you being so vulnerable and sharing your stories of like Cuba, carrying the kids. Like I really find that like really astonishing. And ultimately, sharing your lessons that you learn. I think we could keep going on and on and on. I think there's a lot of stuff that you could share.
Thank you.
But guys, this was like one for the books. I really hope you enjoyed it. I really hope that you could sit down and reflect off of what you just heard, whatever time that you're watching this right now, whether you're in the car listening to this, whether you're sitting down, having dinner, 6 p.m., 7 p.m., you're eating, you're watching this, just put the phone down and then just really think about what you heard, right? Because I think there's a lot to unpack, right? That it's bigger than you. It's bigger than your business. It's the world doesn't revolve around you. That sometimes you just have to trust in the mentors that God has placed in your life. Like he said, a lot of times the problem isn't that somebody doesn't have the skills. The problem is that they don't have the resources. So they just don't listen. They just don't apply what they've been told. So maybe that's a light bulb for you to apply the things that your mentor is being told. But seriously, guys, I really appreciate you guys for making it to the end. Anything you want to leave off on?
I would say that once you, to what I would consider, making it is one is having a relationship with God, having a great partner, my wife, and having great children. Once you put all those, once you put those together, and then, I heard Tucker Carlson say something that kind of resonated, with me.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, they asked him, do you have, social media? What's going on? He says, I don't. I don't have any social media. So just to let you that, because honestly, I only care about what God thinks about me, what my wife thinks about me, and what my children think of me. Everyone else, honestly, I don't even need to answer to them.
Oh, I love that. Guys, I don't think there's a better way to end it. Take it to heart, because I think we're living in a time where it's very dark. It's very like, oh, you can't really talk about this because you can't talk about God. Guys, get back to the roots. I'm just going to leave that message. I think you left it off perfectly. Thank you guys so much for making it to the end. And if you did make it to the end, I'm going to link everything, the Instagram, the everything, the link to Vivo Real Estate Group. So you guys can check out the statistics behind the talk, right? I don't want you to just trust my word. I want you to look at it online. Look at everything. And more than that, guys, I want you to remember that your vision is more than possible if you put in the work, if you have the patience, and if you move with urgency, and more than importantly, you seek first the kingdom of God above all else. But guys, seriously, thank you for making it to the end. Feel free to check out the Instagram to see the clips, and I'll see you guys on the next one. So I'm going to do something really quick. I want to do an intro because I'm starting to feel which one I like more.
Sure.
I'm going to do an intro now and then put this in the beginning and kind of say, guys, this is a valuable thing. Like I've seen a lot of podcasts do that. So just to try it out.
Is there something that I missed you think you wanted me to hit on, or?
I could keep running if you want to. I could keep going, but I don't want to take up too much of your time.
I'm not in a hurry, honestly. I gave you 5:30 till you're in. If you want to, whatever you want to do.
Are you sure?
100%. I'm just going to relight my cigar if you don't mind.
No. Go do your thing. Do your thing. Are you sure though? Because I have questions. I just don't want to take any more of your time because I'm very grateful for the time that you gave me.
No, listen, I don't speak for my health. So when I tell you something, I mean it.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely, man.
I just have a couple more questions. I really.
All right, let me light my cigar.
No. Do your thing. Do your thing. I appreciate your time, and I won't. The reason I'll tell you something because, and this is also a mindset that I'm learning to get out of, because I started a marketing agency where we work with a lot of personal brands, a lot of people that have academy, some guy that's running for Miami-Dade County mayor, and when I started doing this, like,
who's running for Dade County mayor?
Otaola.
Okay.
I don't know if you know.
No.
Some Cuban.
I stay away from politics.
Huh?
I stay away from politics.
Yeah, I try to.
I help. I help guys that are just because they're friends, but not particularly for any political reason.
Yeah.
I have my own political beliefs, but again, everybody's entitled to theirs.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a fine line of like pushing, like, hey, like who do you voting for, like all that stuff. That's not really what it is. But I started to realize I got into the mindset when these people would like offer me like, hey, look, just have lunch with us. We're going to this place for dinner and come with us or something like that. And my mindset was like, no, because, it's, I can't, I'm just, because it's like, you're always seeing it from your perspective. No, but then, that's too much, your time, but then you also have to see it like, you know what? Maybe you're doing that person service. Maybe it's not for you. Maybe it's for the receiving person. And with this, like, if you're offering me more time, I'm going to take the more time because I think there's someone on this other side that is watching it, itching for it, that is just like, damn, like what you said, like really changed my life. And I think there's going to reach hundreds and thousands of people because there's a lot of clips. We had a clip that did like, and I say this very humbly, but I want to say like just for perspective that changed my perspective. There's a clip I think that did like 40 million views, like something crazy, but it made my perspective change because I was like, hold up. This conversation is between two of us, but then it gets blasted out and it could change, I don't know how many people's lives just because of one thing you said. You know what I'm saying? Well, I think there's a lot of stuff that you said that could change a lot of people's lives, but.
Thank you.
No, I mean that. I don't mean that lightly. I really do mean that. there's something else that I wanted to ask, and I think I wrote it down. I don't think we hit on it.
Definitely. I hope that someone who's trying to give up smoking doesn't see me.
No, I think there was, I wrote it down on this. I saw a video the other day. Oh, it was Grant Cardone that he said something,
Okay.
and he was giving like advice for the youth. He was like, look, your first 10K is going to be hard, but then the 20K is going to be easy. Your first 100K is going to be hard, but then the 200K is going to be easy. Your first million is going to be hard, and then the second million is going to be easy. Because once you do something, you're going to know what to do, what to look out for, how to move, how to operate. As for you, obviously, you made your first million. You became successful. You did all these amazing things. Is that true? Like after you make your first 100K, it's easy to make the next 100K. So you make your first million, it's easier to make. After you make your first 10 million, it's easier to make. Is that true?
100%. 100%. What happens is your first 100K, that's all you focus on. And you're so dead set on breaking that 100K that then you break the 100K. That's when you go out, you party, you made it, you have this euphoria. What's it? Euphoria?
Euphoria, yes.
Euphoria, over it. And, then you go to sleep and wake up the next day and you say, wow, what do I do now? I just need to repeat what I just did, I guess, and you start, then you start to kind of, you understand already what the path is. If you're smart enough to reflect and say, okay, this is what I shouldn't do anymore. I mean, there's so many things that I did along the way that I said, I swear I will never say that again. I will never make that comment again. I mean, there's so many things that because sometimes as a salesperson, what happens is, and you want to say so much that you stop listening. And to train yourself to listen, it's the old story, it's like, 2-1, 3-1, 4-1, 5-1. And the more you do that, the more you realize that this person, like I'm doing with you, because they have a need. If they don't have a need, then you have a relationship, then you have a conversation. And when you leave that meeting, they're going to say, if I ever buy anything, that's the guy I'm going to use. That's the person that I'm going to talk to. So don't go in that meeting wanting to close that deal. You got to go in that meeting to listen to what their needs are and then address their needs. And their needs is today, their needs is in 6 months, their need is a year from now. And don't call them, on the 11th month and say, hey, I remember that a year from now, build that relationship. Why not? You're in the area. Stop in and say hello. Make yourself always, visible to that person. And I mean, and when I say it again, in a genuine way, not showing up like a sales guy, showing up and, just because, hey, I saw your car was parked up front, man. I just want to stop in and say hello, see how you're doing. You'd be surprised. You sit down and have a conversation. He might turn around and say, you know what? Man, I was talking to a friend of mine last night. Thank God you stopped in. They call him. He was looking for, a warehouse. He was looking for an office space, looking for whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. You never know where you're going to get when you speak to another business person, especially that someone that you're trying to do business with, that you want to build a relationship with.
That's interesting that you say that, because I've heard it a lot. I don't think there's one person that said it that invented it, but people don't like to be sold to. Very simple. You don't like to be like, unless you're like, let's say you're going to like to buy your Porsche and you already know that you're going there. The guy doesn't have to sell you. You already sold yourself. So it's like, yeah, okay. But for the majority, being in a sales profession, whatever you're doing, whether it's marketing, insurance, real estate, doesn't matter. Most people on the receiving end don't want to be sold to, because they have the same people calling them over and over and over again. So it's kind of like, hey, look, I don't even know if I can help you. Let me just hear you out. Let me see your concerns. Let me ask you questions. Let me be genuine. I think that's a big part of what a lot of the salespeople that I see that have some friends that are missing. And I hear it because it's easy to think and react and ask questions and be like itching when you count your commission dollar, when you're like, that guy has a property that's 4 million. If I times up by 30, oh my gosh, I'm getting that. Holy crap. Yo. Now you got to like, okay, I gotta get this guy. I gotta, and then in that you kind of lose it because
That's
then you
right.
focus on the
Because now
outcome.
your interests are reversed. Now you're looking at your interests, not the client's interest.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you're toast. 100%.
That's a skill though. How do you do that? Like, how do you start to like really genuinely care for the client's interest more than yours?
Real simple. Focus on the client's need. Service the client. His interests and his needs are way before yours. You may be starving for a deal. You may not have closed the deal in God knows how long. You're definitely not going to close one if you're desperate and you're pushing someone that doesn't want to be pushed. I mean, it's will you buy something over the phone when somebody calls you from, randomly, rings 3 times, you go, hello, hello, hello. And all of a sudden you get, there's like a wait period and then you click on because it's, no. And that's what you sound like when you're walking into a meeting and you're trying to sell somebody instead of trying to see what they want to buy. Find out what they want to buy. And I always tell, one of my quotes is, don't chase money because no matter how fast you're going, it's always going 10 or 15 miles an hour faster than you are. Money needs to come to you. You can't chase it. You have to create a situation where the money starts to flow towards you, not you trying to get to it.
How do you do that? By creating the most relationships, like
100% service, providing the service that you're there to give. You're going to give them information, knowledge, you're there to provide the tools for that person to make a decision, and if you give him the right tools and you give him the right information and the right data that he's asking you for, and you're providing the product, it works, and this is no knock on residential real estate, brokers. But in residential real estate, you go into a certain neighborhood and, and someone wants to buy a house, they'll send you whatever their minimum requirements are. And all of a sudden you get a list from here, you send it to them and you tell them, go look and see which one you like. And then we'll take it out. Then they take that approach and they apply it to commercial real estate. And it's so different because it works in residential, but in commercial real estate, do you know what power requirements they have? Do you know what their loading requirements are? Do you know how much office they need? So unless you get all this information up front and you're able to then categorize, certain buildings in certain areas. Geography is very important sometimes because of distribution. Power is important. So you got to figure out buildings that have the power. Is power available in the area? So once you become that knowledgeable, and that takes years, then you become an expert. Once you become an expert and you're laser focused, like we are, we're laser focused in industrial.
Yeah.
I would say bar none, we're probably, I'm going to say top 10 real estate companies in Miami right now, as far as industrial is concerned.
I love that. Please don't be shy with it. And I know you're not, but because I want them to understand, because what happens is that right now, the cars, the watches, like people don't value it as much because not everybody in social media just fakes it. You know what I'm saying? Not everyone. I don't want to generalize, but it's so easily fakeable.
Yes.
If that's a word, fakeable.
I don't think it is.
I don't think it's so easily, whatever. You get what I'm trying to go to. But that when somebody genuinely have it, because I know your story. My dad's talked to me about you, sitting down with you. Like, I know the things that you've done because of the dozens of years that you've had in this industry and putting in the work. And I get lost because social media, some guy from online that got lucky one year just buys a Rolex and that's all he posts on his thing. So you have to listen to him. I think the bigger thing is understanding that you have built a humongous company that is very well respected. I would say a lot of people know who you are. So I don't think that should be lightly of like, yeah, no, guys, like do the research. I'm just going to let you do the research so you see how big the company actually is. But getting to that, I want to get into actually the financial side of it, because I had a period in my life where I stopped playing football when I was in high school. And then I started like reading a bunch of like 10Ks of like company reports, started reading like every Berkshire Hathaway shareholder letter. I started reading everything that had to do with capital management, anything. And I try not to get into it on podcasts because then people get bored of it because like, oh, whatever. But I find it so interesting. And you got into that side of business. I think there's always levels to business. You started off on the brokerage side of it. You started off, obviously, you guys still have that side of the business always going to be there.
100%.
But you also have the capital management side where you look for investments, where you look for land to develop on, right?
Yeah.
How do you look at an investment and say, this is the one that I'm going to make? Obviously, the rate of return is something that's very important, the money that you're going to make on the investment. But
Sure.
What's your investment philosophy?
Normally is if, I can pretty much on a napkin, I can build my entire model.
On a napkin?
Yeah.
I've never heard that. I thought you were going to break down like an Excel
really
sheet of
simple,
this.
honestly. I mean, first of all, if you're not boots on the ground, if you don't know what's going on in your local markets, and you're not an expert in your local markets, then then you really you just there's no way that you can put it together. But once you know the simple basics of one is most important is what can I rent it for? That's it. Everything depends on what the consumer is willing to pay. That tenant.
Yeah.
But that tenant's willing to pay in rent decides what the value of that entire property is. So if you can work from that model in reverse, then you can then everything else just kind of falls into place. I mean, there's a lot in between. So you figure out the rent and real rents, not like a lot of
what you want.
A lot of people, yeah. That's what I say. That's when I talk about the Kool-Aid factor. Don't drink your Kool-Aid, and don't drink anybody else's Kool-Aid who's telling you that you can get this. Do your research, and if you do your research, you figure out what that rent is. Once you figure out what that rent is, then you got to figure out, okay, what's my exit strategy? Once I built this thing, what can I sell it for? That's called a cap rate. So once you figure out where you can sell that specific product for that cap rate, and every product has a different cap rate valuation, whether it's residential, industrial, retail, everyone has there's a different tolerance for what what we call the REITs, pension fund advisory firms, and what they're willing to pay for that property. So once you figure out the rents, you figure out what the cap rate is. Now you know how much you can build to that number. Then you got to go find the land. After you find the land, you got to figure out what's going to take to get that land to the point that you put a shovel in the ground and start construction. Once you figure that out, then you got to get a contractor on board, actually an architect, to design whatever site plan it is that you're trying to build. Then that take that site plan that will work in that site, and that it's marketable to various companies.
That sounds a lot more. I don't know what napkin you're writing this on, but this is a lot of
number. Once you know the number, so once you have the experience, the numbers. That's all you need.
With the experience, obviously.
Exactly. So it's a year's of experience. So once you figure out what that once you know what that construction cost is, you add it all up and see if it makes sense. If it makes sense, it's a deal. Now, once you take that and you give it to the analyst, and then they'll take 7 tabs deep into a formula. And they're going to come up with the same answer I did.
Guys, I don't know what napkin.
And I'm usually within, I would say, between 5 and 10% of what their numbers are.
I find that very interesting because Buffett talked a lot about financial analysts. If you understand capital management, if you understand how to read a P&L, if you understand the numbers behind a deal, you don't need a financial analyst. And he always talked about that. But it's interesting to sit down with an investor like yourself and actually hear you say that. Because obviously the end goal for a lot of the young people watching is to be an investor. You know what I'm saying? To own property, to have tenants, to have cash flow, to have an exit strategy where you're getting into a deal, whatever it may be, a house, a business, whatever, and sell out obviously for a 3X, a 5X, 10X.
I started in a company in New Jersey. It's called the Archie Schwartz Company. And the owner of the company, God rest his soul, is Elmer Schwartz, and he's the guy that taught me the business. And Elmer told me something very interesting, and it might be a little vulgar, but I'm going to go there.
Go.
And he said to me, first of all, this man always signed his name with a green felt pen, green for money. And he said, you should always have 2 colors, one of the two, in your company's name. green or gold? Take a look at my company covers. And the other thing he said is, don't buy any stock. Buy real estate. He said every major stock player in the market, once they achieve the goals that they want to achieve in, and they start to move money out of the market, they're going to move it into real estate. He said, so why are you going to go through that? Why are you going to go through that hamster wheel if you know what the end goal is? He said, just get into real estate. He said, because what happens is when you buy a share of a company, and back then, I mean, today's a different, back then when you bought a share of a company, you actually get physical stock.
Yeah.
You know, a piece of paper.
Like a certificate. Yeah.
A certificate, stock certificate. Yeah. And he said, he said, have you ever seen a stock certificate? And I said, no. So he took one out and he said, and I felt it. He says, you see how hard it is? He goes, yeah. He says, if that stock goes to zero, maybe if you wet this piece of paper, you can wipe your ass with it. But otherwise, it's worthless.
Yeah.
And he said, however, if you buy a piece of real estate, and I don't care where, what neighborhood, if you pay $100,000 for it and the neighborhood goes to crap, it's worth $10,000.
You still have the land.
You hang on to it. He says, you can go to it. You can pee on it if you want. He says, you can do what you want. You play basketball in it, play football, whatever. It's your piece of land and no one can take it away from you. If it has a structure of it and that structure gets destroyed, you have insurance. Insurance replaces it for you. He says, there's no replacement for a stock.
So let me ask you, do you have any investment in stocks or no?
Very little.
Because I want to get your take on it because...
And I have nothing against the guys who are extremely successful in the stock market. I know plenty of my friends are, and they do extremely well. And when they do extremely well, they normally ask me, how can I invest in your
real estate
with you? Yeah.
Because I actually interviewed, I don't know if you know Todd Napolia.
I'm sorry?
Todd Napolia.
No.
Current Capital. He has the brokerage and then he started investing into commercial real estate as well. I told him, I was like, hey, so what asset class would you choose? She's like, I know you're in real estate, but do you still take any stocks? He was like, no, because it fluctuates too much. Obviously, every asset class has some level of fluctuation, volatility, but real estate at least is a little bit more predictable to an extent.
Yeah.
And I told him, I was like, look, I'm just asking this for my personal thing. My end goal is that I really dug into, now that you mentioned not to drink somebody else's Kool-Aid, but I really dug into the life of Warren Buffett, of not his life, but what he did building that conglomerate of a company. That's crazy. If you could even get a 0.1 of that, you're gold. You're gold. But I'm really impressed with what he did. And not only that, the way he did it, that he didn't, I think if you look at his assets and liabilities, he said that the first 20 years, he didn't take any debt on any of the businesses that he purchased. He purchased straight cash.
Right.
Which is crazy. That's not normal.
No, not normal. And it's very hard. I mean, I believe in leverage. I mean, I leverage our properties and I try to keep I'm personally, my personal leverage, is probably around 40 to 50% leverage is all I keep on my personal investments. But I don't see anything wrong. I mean, I've been at 80, even 90% leverage, but I always try to, bring that down to an area that, that no given property is going to take anyone down, they don't balance each other out.
So I asked that because my end goal was that I wanted to build a capital management group that I was buying these businesses, stocks, whether private or public. But now hearing you say that, I want to ask you, even though the stock, because the way that Buffett says is that a stock, most people think about it as a stock. It's not a stock, it's a business. Look at the business, understand the P&Ls, understand the assets and liabilities, understand the future growth prospects of the business, and understand that you're buying a piece of the business. Knowing that, would you still completely be distasteful of stocks, or?
I think that in order to get into the stock market, I think it requires a level of intelligence that I don't have. It requires someone who wants to sit down with the numbers and crunch numbers and look at charts and graphs. And, I like to look at, I like brick and mortar.
Yeah.
I understand brick and mortar. And I'm only speaking from my perspective that, the stock that I have is stock that was given to me, while I was at CB Richard Ellis. That was CB Commercial. And it was, so 1,000 shares. And I think par value at the time was like $1. And I still have it. Never done it, never moved it, never sold it, never traded it. It just sits there and it's grown. I think it's
like 100x return right now, no?
I forget what it, honestly, I don't even look at it, to be honest.
I think it's like 150, something like that, $150.
So, maybe I should check on it.
You go back.
Yeah, I have that. And again, the balance, my entire, I would say all my investments, my portfolio is pure real estate, very diversified from, small bay, older buildings, newer buildings, very few land holdings. We normally, when I purchase land, it's because I already have a plan for it.
Yeah.
I'm looking to develop it, and I'm looking to either, put it to produce in, 24 to 36 months, or I usually have a takeout partner, someone that's going to already kind of, once I complete the project, they'll take the property out from there.
So for a young person out there that they're on the road to that $1 million, they want to get to their first $1 million. I think there's obviously levels to business. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but something that I've studied from a lot of people, especially kind of looking at yours, obviously, like, be through the lines, reading your story. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but you didn't start off as an investor. Like, you have to really work your way up, whether that's saving your commission dollars, whether that's saving not so much money, because money makes money. And especially in capital management and investments, it takes money to invest into a property. So those people that are trying to be investors, it takes a while. For a young person that's on that road to, like, man, I just want to make my first $1 million, what does that roadmap look like?
And I'll tell you, in my business, first of all, no one's going to invest $1 with you if you don't have experience. So our roadmap is going to be probably no less than 5, typically about 10 years before someone will take you seriously, that they're willing to invest in you.
Wow.
Unless your father's name is, X, and now they're investing in the name and the pedigree, and that there's someone behind you. But if you're purely Rene Vivo and you just walked into a bank and said, "Hi, I'm Rene Vivo. I've been doing this for 2 years, and here's my story," they're going to pat you in the back, and in real estate, they're going to say, "That's a great story. Thank you very much. Be on your merry way." Now, when you walk into the bank and you say, "I've been in the business for 10 years as a broker. I've developed a couple of buildings, and I've had marketing experience, and here's my kind of portfolio of what I've done." Now they're looking at, now you're looking at something a little bit, they're taking that a little bit more serious. And even then, they're going to ask you, like, who's on your team?
Yeah.
Who's your contractor? Who's your marketing team? What's your experience? And so there's a whole, there's a whole ball of wax here that you have to kind of,
No, but I find that interesting. I think the bigger thing, what I'm reading behind your sentences and between your sentences, is that everything goes back to the intangibles, your team, your discipline, your habits, like everything from the sentence that we started talking goes back to that, like the intangibles. And I think that's a lot like what you said right now, that sometimes people overcomplicate investments, overcomplicate business, overcomplicate this. Not that simple. Work hard, make the right relationships, follow your mentors or somebody that you respect, listen to their advice, and be patient. Give yourself 5 years before you say, "Hey, should I keep going? Should I quit? Should I?"
Get advice from the guy with the gray hair.
I've never heard that before. Like, that's actually really catchy. Get advice from the guy with the gray hair.
Go get advice from the guy with the gray hair. That's been in the business, There's a reason why he has a gray hair, so there's a reason why he's still in the business. That will help you. And if, and like I said, that's the mentor, pick somebody that, I have 2 mentors, that have nothing to do with real estate. You know, they're just great people that I can go to, and they're older than I am. You know, they're in their, I'm not going to say their age because they see the podcast again. But they're great mentors of mine. You know, one of them is a gentleman's name is Carlos Martinez. Biggest heart. Just, I mean, an unbelievable. Again, I'm going to tell you his story off podcast because you should hear this because it's his testament and what he does. But he's a great friend of mine. And the second one is a very dear friend of mine, Angel Calzadilla. Angel used to own the Rattan Shack here, and now they own Pelican. They're still there in the furniture business, but nothing to do with real estate. But those are my go-tos. Those are the folks that I've been able to say, hey, I have this situation brewing, you know, which is usually a problem, you know, and I just, you know, what do you think? And their advice has always been invaluable. And you know, and same with Carlos, you know. So those two guys are my real, like, my go-tos. And then obviously I'm blessed with having great friends and, you know, that also that I lean on, but mostly, it's those guys. And then when I'm looking for a sounding board, you know, I hate my wife. And I say that because she's always right. You talk about a judge of character. Oh my God. Holds no punches. And she can see straight through the folks that I don't. I tend to be a little bit more accepting and forgiving, and she calls it black and white, you know. And I always tell her, I said, I hate to ask you this question, but what do you think about so and so? And I go, and I hate the answer you're going to give me, and she's usually right. So.
Your wife is always right. I don't know, for those of you guys that are married, getting married, your wife is always right. Guys, I think this is definitely, it's the longest podcast that I've done, the most enjoyable podcast, because I feel.
Thank you. Likewise, by the way, my first and very interesting.
It definitely not. If you're open, I don't want to make this a last because I really enjoy your story. And I will say this: sometimes I have a hard time like creating the question or kind of like the roadmap when people don't have an interview prior. Like it's really difficult. Like that's where I think the skill in the podcasting world is, because it's easy to do a podcast when they already did a bunch of interviews, a bunch of podcasts, because you just follow up the question that the interview said and say, hey, by the way, I heard in the interview you said this. Hey, what do you?
Right.
Very easy. But when you don't have any interviews, nothing online, like really going in on your story, it's like, okay, now I have to like extract it from you. And I'm very happy that you were open enough to share a lot of things that you shared.
Thank you.
And I think there's a lot of gems for you guys out there. I know there's going to be a lot of clips that you guys are going to see on Instagram, on every platform. But seriously,
And for your viewers,
audience, supporters, however you want to
reach out. I mean, honestly, I'm available to them. Whatever level they want to ask me a question, they want to look me up, provide my information. You know, from whatever you think is proper, and I'll be more than happy to do my best to answer everyone that reaches out.
That's right. I can't thank you enough. Seriously, hope this isn't our last podcast that we do. I really did enjoy it. Guys, kind of already did the outro. I'll probably just plug it in and put it in the back. I'll have my team do that. But guys, just thank you. Thank you if you made it to the end. You're a real supporter. More than that, I know that you got a lot of value because I did. I'm like, I'm going to go back home and just watch it on raw, no edited. Just I'm going to watch it because there's so much in here that I think is very impactful. So guys, thank you for making it to the end for the second time. And I'll see you guys on the next one.